Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Milestones, Motivation, and Money. This is a Facebook group. It's also a podcast. I am Angel Radcliffe, financial educator, business strategist. And today we have a special guest, Terre Holmes, who is a real estate agent, author, motivational speaker, who's going to chat with us about the real estate market because the market is so hot right now. We're going to talk strategies to purchasing a property, how to be financially prepared, and so much more. So, Terre, welcome to the show.
Hey, Angel. I had to put my glasses on. I thought I could do it without my glasses, but I couldn't. So thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show, Milestones, Motivation, and Money. Thank you for allowing me to speak to your audience and to your tribe and to talk about this crazy real estate market that we're in. My name is Terre Holmes. I'm a real estate specialist, and I am a licensed agent in the state of Maryland. I work with clients in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, and I work with real estate investors all over the country. And so I'm so happy to be here. So thanks again, Angel.
I'm so excited to have you on and have this conversation. And so, Terre, this last year has been completely insane when we look at the real estate market.
Yes.
I myself purchased a property right before the pandemic, and I actually closed literally the week that cities were going into shutdown. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I making the right decision? Should I just stay in my apartment? And eventually moved and had so many struggles the first few months, especially with businesses being shut down and logistics and not being able to have the home how I wanted it. But imagine the people who were probably in the process of looking for a home during that time or planning to close on a home. And of course, we still saw construction that was still going on, but for some reason, you start to see the costs slowly started to creep up. Can you give me some background on that?
Let me ask you this quickly. So, how do you feel about your decision now?
Oh man, you know what? I'm split because right now I just received a letter from my lender and my property value has skyrocketed. So, which of course makes me have more equity in my home. If I wanted to sell it, I could sell it for over $100,000 more than I purchased last year. So the other split is that I do miss the city life because I moved to the suburbs. I used to live downtown, and I like a walkable neighborhood. That is the only time.
So when I was asking, I was really asking about how you felt about the financial investment, because you mentioned that at the beginning of the pandemic, you bought the house, you weren't sure if you should do it. Probably thought that that we were going to have a excuse me, that we were going to have a housing, a burst, a bubble, right? And so some people were worried about that, but as you can see, your property value increased. And so I want to talk a little bit about why that happened. And it's mainly because we won't have the financial, the real estate burst, at least that we saw back, I think, in 2005 or so. And we won't have that because there are not enough properties on the market. That's number one. And number two, we won't have it because lenders are still, they're more strict than they were back then, right? So you don't have all those crazy programs that you used to have where it was like no doc loans and jumbo loans and just all of these crazy loan programs that they had back then. The loan programs are pretty conservative in a way, in a sense, but they're also lenient for some folks. So it allows some people to be able to get into real estate who were not able to get into real estate. But what I also love about what's happening right now is that about 2 years ago, I started working in real estate wholesaling. So I started learning the real estate wholesaling business, and that's a business that I work in addition to being a real estate agent. And as a result of jumping into the real estate wholesaling business, I started working with a lot of investors and started learning about creative ways to finance homes. And it's interesting because back in, I believe it was the 80s, 70s, 80s, a lot of people did not have big down payments to put down for homes. And so they would do things like assume someone else's mortgage. And that was very common. It was very, very common. So say for instance, Angel, you're in Dallas and you got a job promotion, you had to move to Chicago. I could come in and I could assume your mortgage. And the lenders were okay with that. There was a process that you had to go through and they were okay with it. Well, many of us didn't know, don't know today that that is possible. So there are just so many ways to get into this market that are not traditional. And so just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you so much for the tips. So I want to go back to the climbing prices because as soon as COVID hit, maybe 1 month after, we started to see the prices climb on properties. And I know it's dependent upon various cities. I'm in Dallas. I remember my builder specifically saying to me, "Thank God you got in when you did," because he's like, "We are going to run out of property." So it's almost like they knew something that consumers didn't.
Yeah.
And of course, a few months later, you saw a slow creep. Now, the home that I purchased initially, Trey, you and I have had this conversation. I said I wanted to turn this into a rental property. I said I'll stay here for a few months, turn it into a rental property, and buy something in this same city. And I went to look at another property in December. I said, okay, I really like the subdivision. Buy this other property, rent my home out. Literally went back in March. Now the home was $350,000. Went back in March, and the price went up so much that the starting price is now $500,000. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Oh, I wanted to mention that when I was talking about there being the market sort of having this burst, right? It won't happen because there are not a lot of properties on the market. So we won't have this issue that we had before where everybody was upside down. Everybody was in a loan that they couldn't afford. Too many people, I should say. And so the reason why housing prices are going up is because there's not a lot of inventory. And so it's supply and demand. So the demand is higher than the supply. And that's why you see the prices going up. So if there was a time to get in, this would be the time now. Even if you have to pay over asking, your property will still catch up to the value. It'll eventually catch up, I should say. So just like you saw an increase, you've been in your property for 1 year and you've already seen $100,000 in equity in just 1 year. And so, so many people are complaining about the fact that if you are a buyer on the consumer side, on the retail side, that they're having to pay over the asking price in order to get into a home. That is not the worst thing. Just think about it. If you had bought, last year and you had to pay, say, 20 or 30,000 over asking, your property has now increased to $100,000. So even if you paid 30K over asking, you still now would have 70K in equity. So you have to really put things into perspective and you have to really sort of, weigh the pros against the cons in this market.
Those are some excellent points. Supply and demand and weighing in on the pros versus the cons. And I want to talk about the prices that people have paid above asking price. At least, of course, I live in Texas, so I'm studying the market here. In Dallas and Austin, I've seen as high as 200,000 over asking price. Which,
What?
as a consumer, yes, I'm seeing that. I think that's absurd. I'm like, are you kidding me? So
That's
I think
crazy.
yes. And so I think back to the 08, 09, I call it the financial crisis, recession, whatever everyone wants to call it, where especially where we had the real estate bubble and so many people ended up going into foreclosure. And I almost see the same thing happening where the home prices are skyrocketing. Of course, then it was a bit different. We had issues with lenders and so forth. But now it's like, all right, people are paying way more than these properties are worth.
Yeah.
Don't you think that at some point these properties, the values are going to go down and people are going to be in debt?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. The reason being, well, a couple of things. I bought my first house in 2000. Oh my God, it had to be like 0405. And so we started to see the burst then. So back then, because I sold my property soon thereafter, and so around that time is when the prices started to go down because there were a lot of crazy lending programs back then. But anyway, to your point, about 2008, 2009, and how, we saw the real estate market sort of crumble. The difference, like I said before, is that there are not a lot of properties in the marketplace. So property values are not going to go down because people are losing their properties, or because people are over leveraged in their properties, because they're not lending like that. And the federal government and other and different lenders and different institutions gave people so much money so that they wouldn't lose their properties during this time, this crisis. So we're not going to see people. The reason why you saw that in 08 and 09 is because people were losing their houses. So you're not going to see people losing their houses at such a high rate, and the banks holding on to all of these so-called assets, right? All this real estate, because the bank is not in the business of owning real estate. You're not going to see that. So those properties that sold for over asking, they're actually driving the market. So they're now increasing the properties around them. So if a property sells for over asking, and then you have another property that sells for over asking in the neighborhood, it doesn't increase the property value like tremendously. It doesn't mean that you can ask 100K over asking, because you still have to be approved by your lender, and the house still has to be appraised. But my point is that it will eventually catch up. So last year you bought your house, and then a year later it's now worth 100K more. So people paying over asking, the prices of the homes will eventually catch up with inflation and with just other houses selling around them, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So let's get into holding on to property, because sometimes what people do is they just want to purchase a property because they'd rather have the space and they don't want to be in
Yep.
an apartment, especially depending on the market. I know here in Dallas, to rent the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment is a mortgage. So most people go straight to purchasing a home.
Yep.
So would you say that purchasing a home now in this market would be more so for the long term, not really like a short term flip per se?
Well, if you get a great deal, of course you can flip it. So I wouldn't argue, one over the other. If you get a great deal, you can also flip that deal. But in terms of if I'm a renter versus owning, yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a long-term game. So, a lot of cities, and it's not just like Dallas, it's regular, ordinary cities where now it's cheaper for you to purchase than it is for you to own. And so, for any of your listeners, folks who are listening to the broadcast, if you want me to give you an analysis of how much money you could save or how much money you're losing as a renter, I would love to give that to you, and I can give that to you complimentary. I don't care which city, state you're in throughout the U.S. I can give you this sort of analysis of what it costs you to rent, right? The true cost of renting. But it is definitely a long-term game, Angel. And so, but in some instances, when I bought my house back in 2005, I sold it a year later and still pocketed 35,000, right? So I made 35 off of that. So you still can find deals like that. I had to put a little money into it and fix it up a little bit, but you can still find deals like that.
Wow, awesome, Teray. So you talked about providing an analysis to any client or anyone that wants to reach out to you, and I want to get into that as well, because consumers, especially first-time home buyers, there's so many things they don't know about purchasing a home,
Mhm.
and comparative market analysis is one of them. Why is it important to have that market analysis?
Well, so what I was talking about specifically on the renter side is that we have a tool that literally says if you're paying this much in rent, this is how much you're losing if you by not buying. So we have a tool like that. So it's not a CMA, but with a comparative marketing analysis as a first-time home buyer, that's just a tool that we use to sort of compare what has sold, what is in the marketplace, what's pending, so that we can fairly price or accurately price a home that you'll be buying. So we'll do a CMA to be able to show you, these are the houses that have sold. These are the houses on the market, and this is where we should be in terms of how much we should offer.
Okay.
And for a seller, so let me talk about sellers. And for sellers, that's the same thing for sellers. So if we want to fairly price your house as a seller, we'll use the same type of tool to say, okay, so let's do a CMA. Let's do a market analysis to see where should we price your house in order for your house to sell. And one of the things I want to mention to sellers in particular is that sellers, everybody wants to capitalize on the fact that houses are selling above asking price. Here is a tip. You still have to price your house at a fair price. You cannot overprice it and think that it's going to sell above asking, because that's sort of counterintuitive. You have to still price it at a fair price so that then they can bid on it and then it'll go over asking. So if I price it fairly, now somebody's going to come and offer me the fair market value for it. But then somebody else is going to come and say, oh, well, they've already offered you full price. Now I have to offer you a little bit more than full price. Then someone else is going to say, well, if they offer you full price, I'm going to do all cash. And then I'm going to say no contingencies. So that's how you get your home sold over asking. It's not by pricing it over asking.
Oh, awesome. So that's some great advice. Of course, with me being the money person, I want to move more into the financial side as far as having someone that's prepared and the things that they need to do to even step into purchasing a home. And I know when I had you on as a guest, as a podcast guest, we talked about this. We talked about purchasing via loan or purchasing via cash. So let's talk about the typical consumer, because everyone doesn't have 400,000 sitting in the bank, or even a lower amount to purchase a foreclosure property. So most people are taking out a loan to finance their home. And what do you say to your clients who are looking to a home as far as how they should be prepared financially?
That's a great question. There are so many different ways to prepare. So it depends on which loan program you're going with. Say, for instance, I deal with a lot of veterans. I love working with veterans. Love working with first-time home buyers. And for first-time home buyer, there's a program, the FHA program. And so for that program, you only have to have 3.5% down. So say, for instance, if you're buying a house for, say, $200,000, you only need $7,000 down, plus your closing costs and plus your fees, right? So the thing about that is that you may or may not have all of that in the bank. And if you don't, there are different ways in which you can get that. Now, when your lender first starts to approve you and you're going through the process, they want to see that money in the bank. So we call that seasoned, and they want to see it in the bank, I think, for 2 months, 2 months or more. But you can also get that money to put down as a gift. So a family member or someone close to you can give it to you as a gift. Or you can tap into your 401k and you can take up to 50% out your 401k and pay yourself back interest free. And lenders love that because it's your money and you get to pay yourself back interest free. In addition to that, so, me telling you that, I still say, talk to your 401k representative at your job, talk to them about how you can use your 401k to purchase a home. But that's really what a 401k is. It's really to use, not that's what it's for, but those are some of the things they like for you to use it for. They like for you to use it for acquiring assets and doing things of that nature. And many people don't use it at all or tap into it. So you can tap into it. Now, there's a difference between liquidating your 401k and borrowing from it. If you liquidate from it, you pay like over 50. I think it's actually I have a little note here. If you liquidate it, you'll pay 60% if you liquidate it. But if you borrow from it, you pay nothing and you can pay yourself back interest free. So these are just some of the ways in which you can get the money if you don't have the money to purchase your home. If you're going the traditional route and you're doing like a conventional loan, you may have to put down a little bit more. You may have to put down, 10% in some instances or 5%. It depends on the loan program. But always, there are two things that rule, and they don't always rule simultaneously. Cash is king and credit is king. Cash and credit, right? So if I have
Absolutely.
right? So if I have cash and I can buy a house in all cash, I don't need credit. Let me put that finger back over there. I don't
We
need credit.
talk about this. Oh, Terrain, we had some friendly banter on this topic.
Yeah. So if I have need credit. But if I don't have credit, I need cash. So I need that. When I don't have good credit, I have to have sometimes bring more cash to the table. And so, so there are, like I said, so many ways to leverage yourself in this market, but you have to know sort of where you stand. And a lot of people don't realize this, that if you're planning to buy a house, say like 3 months from now, every single month over the next 3 months, you can get your credit score up by 10 points, 15 points. If you got your credit score up by 15 points every single month, you'll have your credit score up by 45 points in 3 months. 3 months. And in some instances, it can go higher than that. So those are some of the things that I teach my clients and I talk to my clients about, is how do we get our credit score up in a short period of time. And Angel, what's so crazy to me is that so many people think it's impossible. It's like going to the doctor. Everybody listens to the doctor. The doctor doesn't know everything. The doctor doesn't know everything. So when it comes to credit, everybody, I don't know who the heck they're listening to. But people, so when you tell someone health-wise, when you say, hey, you have high blood pressure, diabetes, you can overcome that. I know people who've gotten off medication. People will tell me that's not true. Yes, it is true. And it's the same thing with credit. When I tell them, your credit score can go up by 10 points every month, or, 15 points every month, they're like, that's not true. Angel, I don't know where these people get this information from. Why people don't believe. I don't know. They don't believe.
It's so crazy how people in our society, and I'm going to get into the financial tip, of course, people in our society learn things as they grow from friends and family members who also don't know about finances. So as they get older, you become an adult, you only know what you've learned in your lifetime. And if you've never had the proper resources, you've never had anyone really tell you the proper way to do something. And you have to go through this process of unlearning. I just talked about this the other day with someone, to unlearn all of those things that you learned on at an early age and carried into your adult life that are wrong, especially with finances.
So here's a tip I want to give your audience. Here's one of the biggest things that we have to unlearn. We have to unlearn how to use credit cards. Like, we're told, don't use your credit card. Yeah, you should use your credit cards. It's about how you use your credit cards. So, case in point, I no longer believe in store cards. So, like, remember back in the day, everybody had a limited credit card, and Express, Macy's credit card, and May Company, and Higby, and whatever. I'm dating myself, right? But everybody had these store credit cards. Well, number one, the interest rate is ridiculous. And number two, I can't use it the same way I can a Visa, a MasterCard, American Express card. I can't use it the same way. But I can use a Visa card, and Visa, MasterCard, American Express. I can use those cards way more easily, and I can buy everything with those cards, but I can't buy everything with a credit card from a clothing store. So I really don't believe in clothing store and those types of credit cards anymore. I just don't. Now, you may have a different perception and experience with that. I just don't believe in them per se. Maybe a Home Depot. I definitely believe in a Home Depot credit card. Okay? I definitely believe in Home Depot. And maybe like a Costco, perhaps. But here's my point. Here's a tip that I give to people. If you had 2 or 3, regular bank cards, so bank cards mean Visa, MasterCard, American Express, whatever, Discover. If you had small balances on those, right? You don't even need big balances. If you paid those down every single month down to 30%, and you did this every single month, but then you use them every single month. You use them to buy your groceries. You use them to perhaps buy your kids school supplies. You use them to buy your gas. You use them every single month for regular stuff that you're going to buy anyway. Every single month, when you use them and then pay them back down at the end of the month, right before the end of the month, pay them down to 30%, your credit score goes up. Every single month that you do that. If you keep repeating that cycle with the same credit cards, your credit score goes up. Now, I can't do that with my Macy's card. There's nothing that I need from Macy's every single day. But if I have a Visa card, I need gas. I need food. My kids need clothes. I'm going out with the girls for a night out on the town. Happy hour, business. I need those things every month. So I use a credit card every month, and then right before the end of the month, pay it down to 30%. That's how you use your credit cards, and that's how you keep your score going up and up and up. It shows usage, and then it shows you paid it down. It shows usage, then paid it down. That's how you do it. And that's something I had to learn.
Yes. And that's something that we all have to learn. And I want to go back to something you said about the retail cards, because it's not the fact that people should not have them. It's, of course, how you said you can't pay them off every month, but you do want to be diversified in the types of credit lines that you have. So having those retail cards adds to the diversification. But that's how I use my credit cards. I have one that's only for emergencies. If there's some massive emergency where, of course, I don't want to pull from investments, but everything else, I pay my regular bills on credit cards every month, utilize the points. So free points for free gift cards, hotel stays, whatever your urge is for the free points. And so, and then I just pay the balance in full or keep it below 30%. And then that definitely does help take your score up. And I want to go all the way back, maybe 10 minutes ago when you were saying cash is king. We had this conversation before on if you have the cash sitting in your bank account, should you take that and just buy a home with cash, or should you finance the home? And okay, depending on the price of the home, if it's a couple $100,000, some people always want this envision of being debt free. But if you have $200,000-$300,000 in your bank, personally, I think you can invest that money and earn a better return than putting all of that into a home. Which, yes, your home earns equity, but how much equity are you going to earn? Are you going to earn the same amount of returns as you could by investing that money over 15, 30 years? So
we have a weird echo. It's a very odd echo. You don't hear it?
I don't hear anything.
I feel like I sound like I'm an alien. You know how they've been talking about they've been having alien sightings. my voice sounds like an alien right now.
No, your audio is coming through perfect. So
okay, perfect. So I digress, good people. So anyway, so what was our argument? What did you say when we had the podcast talking? We were talking about.
So, all right. So for the people who are listening, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the podcast, Terre was on season 1. We talked about multiple streams of income. Multiple streams of income are sexy, and we talked about real estate. Subscribe, Milestones, Motivation, and Money. It's on every single podcast platform. This is like a midway plug. Season 2 is launching on Monday. And I think with that said, we're just going to take like a 10-second break. So I'm going to add onto the screen QR codes. If you are watching on your computer, you can actually scan the QR code for Apple Podcasts or Spotify and subscribe to the platform of your choice. So we'll be back in about 10 seconds. I sort of like that.
Oh, look at you, your fancy self. So fancy. So
our banter was, should someone just take the money and purchase a home versus getting financed for a mortgage?
Right? You initially
I said that, you know, if they have all of this money that's sitting around, they should invest it. They may earn a better return, even though the interest rates are low. We've seen 2% interest rates. I've seen something like 1.75 for a 15-year. But you can earn, if you really calculate it and you do the compound interest, depending on the amount, it's all depending on the amount. You want to have the proper calculators, you can really earn some returns on.
I remember now. So right, you said take it and invest it, right? I said you can use it and pay for the house, pay it in cash, right? The reason why I said that is because you can then leverage the house because now it's all equity. So now you can.
Yes, you can leverage the equity, but at what cost? Now you have to go to a bank to take out a loan.
That is true. That is 100%.
That's probably a higher interest rate than the initial interest rate of a mortgage.
That is true. So that's true, Angel. I gotta take a little water break. You can keep talking, Angel. So we did have this banter, but I'm gonna tell you the benefit in a second. So I gotta take a little PSA water break.
So, for everyone who's just tuning in, thanks so much for hopping on. Make sure you share the broadcast. This is Milestones, Motivation, and Money. It's a Facebook group. It's also a podcast. So, this is Terre Holmes. She's a real estate agent, author, motivational speaker. I am Angel Radcliffe, financial educator, business strategist, and I talk about all things money and business. You can follow me online, Angel Radcliffe. Angel Speaks on Facebook. Angel Speaks on Facebook, Miss RMBA on all social media. Ask questions if you're here. Even if you're watching this after the live stream, ask questions. I'll come back and I'll check the Q&A. I believe this is we're on Facebook and YouTube now. So hi to anyone that's new who's watching. I know it's early on a Saturday morning, but
Yeah,
this will become a regular thing. This is going to be a regular thing. So the live streams from the Facebook group, so there'll also be in other destinations coming next month with some amazing guests. So stay tuned.
awesome. And you can follow me.
Yes, where can they follow you, Terre?
Sorry. You can follow me on all platforms, Instagram and Facebook, at Terre Holmes. And so it's just Terre. So, oh, and on TikTok. So I've started to do real estate videos on TikTok. So you can follow me on TikTok, Terre Holmes, Instagram, and Facebook. And on Facebook, I think I am the Terre Holmes because there is another Terre Holmes, but I am the Terre Holmes. Yes, girl.
Terre Holmes.
The Terre Holmes.
The Terre Holmes.
The
So we're going to switch it up.
Yes.
And if you need
So
to know how to spell Terre's name, there you go.
thank you. My name. And so I also have a lifestyle brand called Lily and Eve, and you can follow Lily and Eve on Facebook as well as on Instagram as well. So I was saying that if you have cash, and you're right, if you take the cash and you buy the house, and that means that now all of your cash is tied into the house, and then you would have to get a loan to be qualified, to pull money out. But the thing is that sometimes you get a bigger discount if you pay in cash. So if I could pay in cash and get if I'm purchasing a house, I can get a better price if I pay in cash. So depending on, say for instance, $100,000 house, maybe if I offer 85K in cash, they'll take that over the person who offers 100,000 FHA. So
Okay.
that's why I'm saying that sometimes that's why, that's how you can leverage your cash. And that's why, it helps to buy in all cash. But to your point, Angel, is that if you purchase it all cash, you do need to know that if you want to pull cash from that house, you have to requalify for that. So your credit has to be up to par. All of those things need to be in order. You asked me earlier what people need to do to prepare to buy a home. That was your question earlier.
Yes.
And I would say credit, if you don't have the credit but you have the cash, you can still buy a house. So what do I mean by that? Back to the FHA loan. If I don't have the credit, FHA, my lender will allow you to qualify for a score as low as 580. So you can, and then I have another lender you can qualify for a score as low as 500. Like they've made that happen. And so, but what that means is that that if you qualify for a home with a score that low, that your interest rate might be higher. Now, in this market, because interest rates are at about they're at about 3.25, a little bit above that anyway. A higher interest rate might be 5%. That's not the end of the world. Truly, it's not. I mean, it's not because interest rates were way higher than that. However, I know she got something to say. However, my point would be if you had to get into one at a higher interest rate, my suggestion still is to work on that credit and build that credit back up so you can refinance sooner than later. You don't want to stay in it. Angel says no. Go ahead, Angel.
I always say work on your credit before you get into the home because so many people, this is what people do. They'll buy the house and then the next year or 2 years later, they're like, oh, let's refinance. Here's the downside to refinancing, especially so soon. When you walked into your mortgage, most people are paying a down payment plus their closing costs. unless you got into some good program where you had zero closing costs. If you purchase a new build, sometimes there's incentives where you pay no closing costs. I didn't pay any closing costs when I purchased my home. I only put a down payment down.
Okay.
If you are paying closing costs, depending on the price of your home, you may be shelling out $6,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. When you're refinancing, there are some lenders that will charge you all of those costs that you see on your settlement sheet all over again. And then most people will say, well, my home, like I need water now. My home appreciated, so I'm just gonna like roll it back into the loan. It's like refinancing a bad car loan where you already owe all this money. But I'm like, what? Why would you do that? Like, or they do have the money, they have it in their savings, and then they just shell it out. And you don't know when your next emergency is coming around the corner. And I'm big on the emergency fund because you should have 3 to 6 months of emergency funds. And most recently, if people have been following, they know that I tend to say, even though the whole push is 3 to 6 months, 3 to 6 months, I've been in 2 instances in my life where I've needed more than 6 months of an emergency fund. More than 6 months, because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you are fortunate enough to have that amount of cash sitting around that you can go and take to refinance your home, just wait it out and get your credit together. 6 months to a year is not going to hurt staying in an apartment. You're not going to lose that much money to do that.
So I love this because this is going to be our banter. This is the banter back and forth. So I want to give you a different scenario. Let's say you're in a city like Maryland, a state like Maryland, city like Gaithersburg, whatever, or you're in a place where rents cost more than mortgage. The other thing is that in many instances, you cannot do what you want to do with your rental property. So you're in a rental, you can't go and get a roommate sometimes. You can't go and do, short-term rentals. You can't do Airbnb. You can't do these things to subsidize. What I am saying, Angel, is a lot of people going to purchase homes and being able to now leverage the money that they have because they don't have to pay rent or a mortgage because it's being paid for through, short-term rentals and things of that nature, roommates or whatever it may be. Then they're able to now keep more of their money in their pocket, pay their debts down, and somebody else is paying their mortgage. So there are situations where it's all about how you need to. Sometimes people need that. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people aren't making as much money as they were making before. So there are a lot of people who are choosing that option. They're choosing that option. They're not forced into it. They're choosing it because of the fact that somebody else is paying their mortgage and they don't have to pay it. Now they have the money. I'm not saying, because you got to get qualified. You got to have the money to get qualified, right? But my point is that sometimes it's better for people to do that because they're going to pay so much money in rent and they can't even leverage the rent.
Whew, okay, this could lead to a very healthy debate, debate.
Let's go.
All right. It's situational. Outweigh the cost. Yep. When I'm looking at it from a financial perspective, you're losing money. And so I suppose depending on the situation, we got to outweigh we need a case study. We need to take all the financials and put it down and then just weigh it side by side.
I agree with you. It's situational. Yep.
I would say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 80% of the time in a scenario like that, you're better off waiting and just getting your credit together. And if you dedicate a few hours a month working on your credit, working on your finances, getting on a budget, everyone knows I'm all about the budget. You can do it. You can be ready to step into the home at the proper interest rate and not having to go through that madness. Because think about it, like when you purchase a home, Terre, what is like the highest expense that people spend money on the first few mons? It's like furnishing the home.
Here's
like, so if you don't have that cash saved up, they're gonna go and put it on credit cards. Like you already know. I called you and told you, I was like, I didn't know refrigerators cost this much money. I was like, oh my God, like $2,000 for a refrigerator. And then on top of that, you have to furnish your entire home. If you don't have the cash, you don't want to take away from your emergency fund, which most people don't, they're going to put it on a credit card. So guess what? Now that's increasing your utilization, which is going to lower your credit score, which guess what? It's going to take months to pay that debt off, which is going to take longer for the person to be in a position to refinance their
So
home.
I say that if you have a low credit score and you are a person who is open to, I'm going back to this. Yes, I am. And you are a person who is open to things like room shares and short-term rentals and all of that, that can help you pay down your debts. It can help you pay your mortgage and pay down your debts sooner. If you're renting and you have high rents, a whole bunch of people are paycheck to paycheck with those high rents. So if I stay in a high rent situation just to bring my credit score up, how long will it really take me? And how much money have I really lost renting for 2 years, 3 years, because I'm in a high rent situation? I can't get a roommate. I can only afford a one bedroom or whatever. And that still has me sort of maxed out every single month, and I don't have the extra income to do that. So I'm
Okay.
just saying, and on top of that, really going back to what we talked about earlier in this broadcast, looking at non-traditional ways to buy homes. You could buy a home. We ain't even got into that yet. Let's get into that, because how much time we got on here? Because we need to get into that.
We got a little bit of time. We got about
Okay.
30 more minutes.
So now let's talk about non-traditional ways of buying homes. You still can assume a mortgage. You can assume a mortgage. The bank has to approve it, but once you've gone through the process, many banks don't not approve it because they want somebody paying it. So you can do an assumable mortgage. You can do owner financing. You can do subject to. So these are things that you all want to research. You take on someone's mortgage subject to the existing mortgage, and you get their interest rate. So you only want to take those on if they have a really good interest rate, and you can take on their mortgage subject to the existing mortgage. And in many instances, you don't have to put down anything or put down very little to do that. Or you can get owner financing, as I said. So say for instance, this owner owns a house free and clear. They don't have any debts on it. It may be advantageous to them to just allow you to do owner, for them to create an owner finance type of situation, because maybe they're up in age and they don't want to be hit with high taxes for selling it. So they don't want to pay out all of these taxes for selling the house. And so they would rather just allow you to pay them, say, 5,000 down, and then pay them a monthly, a monthly mortgage, right? And then say you do that for 5 years, and then you can refinance in 5 years. So there are a lot of different ways to get into a home, and that's even when you have bad credit. So I'm still saying that if you're Angel saying, well, if you have bad credit, you're going to be hit with all this interest. I'm saying you can go into other people's loans in various ways and still leverage their equity in that home.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. And I want to go back to someone who is in a high rent situation. Of course, they may not be able to like get a roommate in the property that they're renting, but they can go and look for a roommate, like someone who owns a home and is looking for a roommate, or
Absolutely.
even temporary relocation. Because think about, like, if you do want to purchase a home in a high cost of living area, think about New York, DC, Seattle, gosh, California, so many places where it is high cost of living. Maybe you should live temporarily somewhere else in a low cost of living area to financially prepare yourself. And those are sacrifices that we have to take in life, because anything in life that we want to do, we have to sacrifice something, especially to put ourselves in a better financial position. But again,
Absolutely.
there's several options. And of course, I'm getting halfway with the agreements with you on the roommate thing.
Thank you. So, and just the fact that what we have to teach people, and particularly our people, is that there's more than one way to skin a cat. That a mortgage is not the only way to buy a house. You don't have to get financed by a bank to buy a house. There are so many different ways to buy a home that does not include traditional financing. So we talked about traditional financing, but there are multiple ways of doing it. In addition to that, for those people who are veterans or married to a veteran or whatever. Do you know how many people don't even use their VA loan to buy a house? And that VA loan is amazing. Like, there are so many benefits to buying a house with a VA loan. And the thing about a VA loan is that you can use it more than once. So you have a certain amount, right, that you qualify for. And so you could buy, say for instance, you qualify for 500K, but then you go and buy a house for 250. You can use the other part of that VA loan to go buy a rental property. And VA doesn't have all of the different, crazy requirements that the traditional or conventional mortgages have. And so that's another thing to consider. So if you are looking for a real estate agent anywhere in the country, please contact me. I can help you find a real estate agent anywhere in the country. I am not a mortgage professional, even though we're talking about this. I'm just giving you options. Always seek the advice of a mortgage professional. And the other thing that you need to know is that when you're qualifying for a loan and they pull your credit, you're not dinged the way you think you are. You're probably dinged a few points. That's not going to kill you. And so, and in addition to that, you have the opportunity for several people to pull your credit and you not be dinged for that, right? Because it's sort of, you can speak more to that, right, Angel, in terms of how they look at it when you're, so say like when you're going to buy a car, if you go out that weekend and multiple people pull your credit, you're not dinged every single time. They sort of lump it into, oh, okay, the credit bureaus know, oh, she's looking for a car, or oh, they're looking for a house. So your credit's not hit the same way. So don't be concerned about that, and make sure when you're looking for a mortgage lender that you're shopping around, that you're looking at different mortgage lenders, because different mortgage lenders have different programs. My one mortgage lender can get you financed at 500 credit score. My other, this is for FHA. My other lender, her minimum is 580, while my other lender, his minimum is 640. This is for the same program, right? So I got one 500, one 580, and one 640 for FHA. So depending on where you are, what your situation is, you may need to shop around to different lenders to see what other programs they have. Some lenders don't do VA loans. Some lenders do. Some lenders have programs for teachers. Some lenders have programs for firemen. You just have to know. So if you're like one of those persons who, you're a teacher, you're a fireman, some other type of public service type of career, there are loans specifically for you guys as well.
Right. And so when I want to go back to the credit inquiry, because you should shop around for a mortgage. I always say compare at least 3 different lenders. Some people will compare more. If you're going specifically through a builder program and they're offering you an incentive of $5,000 or $10,000 back at closing, they may require you to even qualify or compare their preferred lender to whatever lender you're going with. And sometimes I know with my builder, they require me to compare at least 4 different lenders in order for them to give me money back at closing. And so you have 45 days. The window is 45 days to have all of those inquiries to where they're lumped into one. So if you're still shopping around after that 45-day period, then it sort of lumps out and goes into a different one. But
I
also,
but I didn't want to be wrong. I knew I thought it was 45 days, but
I say also be a little wary and research these mortgage companies, especially if they're not well known. Because I talked about this last year, and I talked about this on my podcast. I had issues with one particular mortgage company, and I had to file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. Actually, 2 mortgage companies. So like, imagine just going through this process. Like the first time, the company pulled my credit report. They told me that I was approved. There was they claimed that there was a glitch in their system. Every single day for a week, this company continuously pulled my credit report. I kept getting alerts on my Credit Karma every day. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I thought someone stole my information. I didn't know what was going on. I was pulled out of that company. And then I went with another company, which I'm not going to mention their name, but I went with another company and I thought everything was good. Went through all the checks, did everything, underwriting. 3 days before my closing, they call me and then they give me a new number to bring to closing. I was only supposed to bring my down payment, and now they were telling me to bring like another $15,000. Wow. And think about someone who's going to purchase a home. Typically, like you've saved up for your down payment, or you're financially prepared for whatever situation. And looking at, I want to go back to statistics on finances. The average consumer doesn't have $1,000 in their bank account. Most people who are going to purchase a home, either a lot of people are using their tax return, people are using their bonuses from work, they're saving up, they're getting money from family members, they're taking money out the 401k or borrowing from the 401k. There's a lot of different instances of how people are getting their down payment money. So the average person may not have another $10,000, $15,000 sitting around like in cash. And so when they called me, I had the money, but I was like, are you kidding me? Like, so every single time that we've spoken, done these check-ins over the last 6 weeks, like what has changed since then? And someone made an error in their department and calculated numbers wrong. And I could have went with one of the other companies that I compared with, which I did. I backed out of that company 3 days before my closing. We had to change my closing date. I almost lost the house because the lender thought that I was just like playing around and I wasn't going to close. And of course, as a real estate agent, when you're signing a contract, you have to put down your earnest money. And I was just like, am I going to lose earnest money? Oh my God. I was pissed.
Yeah. Wow.
I had to file a complaint with both of those companies. So I'll say anyone that is going through the mortgage process or anything financial related, and you have an issue with a lender, credit card company, whoever, you can file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and really have your matter solved, or really bring some attention to it from a higher level within that particular company.
And so yeah, thank you for saying that. And that is so true. When I was talking to my lender this past week about some different clients that I'm working with, she was talking about that. Like people coming to they only got $1,000. They're like, listen, you got to get more money. So people pulling from their 401k or getting gifts from family members and friends and such. And so I want to share one other thing about the market that we're in now, and how buyers can sort of leverage this market to win the offer in a sense, and how your agents can help you win the offer. There are a couple of things that I suggest, so some tips I want to give. But first I want to say once again, my name is Terre Holmes, and I'm actually a real estate agent licensed in the state of Maryland, about to be licensed in DC, although my team and I still work with clients in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And I am with J. Parr Stellar Living. I am the founder of Lily and Eve, which is a lifestyle brand, which is what you see here. But if you go to my Facebook page, you will see that I'm a licensed agent with J. Parr Stellar Living here in Maryland. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention is that one of the ways in which you can win the offer right now in this seller's market is a couple of things. Making sure you can't have any contingencies, almost like you have to sort of in a sense, you almost have to take a house as is in order to win offers. Oftentimes you don't have a lot of leverage to negotiate unless you have a real estate agent who is really, really, really good at negotiating, but they're not going to be able to negotiate a property that just came on the market, or a property that is like in pristine condition. Those aren't the properties your agent's going to be able to negotiate on your behalf for. They're going to be negotiating on the properties that have been sitting on the market for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, or more. So in that instance, you're going to have to look at properties that may not be the best properties in the market if you want to negotiate in this market. If you don't have a lot of money to bring to the table, you just can't, determine like, I'm only going to look at like the best properties in the market, because unless you have $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 over asking, you can't compete with houses that are just coming on the market or houses that are in pristine condition. So in that case, like I said, you want to look at houses that may need work. In addition to that, if you can't compete, you still don't want to go in and compete and say, well, I'm paying off all cash, but I need you to do this. That will surely get you kicked, your offer not accepted. If you're paying all cash, even if you're paying all cash, you can't come in and say, I'm paying all cash, but you need to do X, Y, Z, and elemental P. You can't do that, okay? You have to still come in almost humbly, and you have to know that you're competing with other people with all cash. You have to know you're coming in competing with people who have no contingencies. And your realtor has to explain to you what that means. That if we're not going to have an inspection contingency, what does that mean? That means that you might have some problems down the road, but you know the risk that you're taking. And so those are some of the things that I wanted to share with your audience about how do you compete. But the other things that I do for my clients is that I look for houses off the market. So I go and hunt for houses off the market. And I use different tools that we have to look for motivated sellers. So I'll look for people who have vacant properties. I have tools that I can use to show that this property is vacant. Maybe somebody just moved out. Maybe they're just having like renter's remorse and they don't want to rent it and they're thinking about selling it. So it's vacant. It's been vacant for a while. Maybe someone died and they haven't figured out what to do with the house yet. Maybe it's vacant because they just bought it. Well, yeah, I wouldn't even look at those because it would show me that they had just bought it. But my point is that I'm looking for motivated sellers. So vacants, or I'm looking at properties that a seller has owned for like 20, 30 years. And we call those tired landlords. So they've owned it for so much time that they have a high probability of selling. So I go and I look for properties like that for my clients. So I don't have to compete. It's not my job.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, Teray, I want you also to talk about some of the other things that you're doing in real estate, and again, how people can reach out to you.
Awesome. So I work a lot with real estate investors. It really has become my sweet spot in the last 2 years, and I work with investors all over the country. And so if you're not in the DMV, which is DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and you're looking for an investment property in another state, you can reach out to me and let me know where you're looking for that investment property in particular. And but I work with cash investors. So if you're a cash investor watching this broadcast, we can talk. Right now, we're working mostly in Ohio, Georgia. Um, so specifically, Cleveland, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, Atlanta, Georgia, Fayetteville, North Carolina, of course, DC and Maryland. And so those are the areas that we currently have inventory in or working on acquiring inventory in for our investors. But like I said, I work with seller or buyers all over the country. So if you're looking to buy, I have a girlfriend right now, a really good friend. She's buying her second home in St. Croix. So I was able to, interview and get her a great agent in St. Croix that she's working with, and she's really pleased with the agent, and they're looking for her, a home there. So if you're looking to buy the second home, I love those folks as well, because what it's really about and what my passion is in helping people to build and helping our people, Black folks, build generational wealth through real estate and build wealth through real estate. We are behind the eight ball. A lot of the clients that I'm working with, sellers that we work with, they own 100 and 200 properties, and so I always tell people that the house you live in is not your investment property. That's not your investment property. It's the house that you buy after the house you live in that becomes your investment property. That's when you become an investor. When the house you buy is not you're not an investor when you buy a house. You are an investor when you buy the next house. That's when you are officially an investor. So I
Wow.
love working with investors and educating investors and helping investors gain more doors. So what does that mean by doors? That means that if I go and buy an apartment building that has 3 units, that's 3 doors. So, I like helping investors acquire more doors, and I like matching you guys up with real estate agents, professionals who are going to really take care of you and help you to build your real estate portfolio.
Thanks so much for those nuggets and tidbits, and sharing some more of what you do. I know we've been on for an hour, so
Yeah.
it's hours
Yeah.
full.
So send me, I didn't mention this. So if you want to send me a message, you can always DM me on Facebook. You can find me at Terre Holmes, which is my name. So I'm on Facebook as Terre Holmes. I'm on Instagram as Terre Holmes. And you can always email me. You can send me an email. It's Terre at thpropertypartners.com. So Terre at thpropertypartners.com. So that is my email address, and shoot me an email and I'll do a 15-minute consultation. If you go to my Instagram page, you can actually schedule a 15-minute consultation no matter where you are in the country. We can talk about your situation. and see if I can partner you and help you get started in the right direction. So whether I'm partnering you with a real estate agent or a mortgage lender. And here's the thing about your mortgage lender and getting started. You want to meet with a mortgage lender because you want to know where you are. You want them to do a soft pull so that you know where you are and know what you need to do in order to, in many instances, they'll be able to look at your credit report and say, hey, if you can do this, 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 this. In some instances, let me take that back, actually, because I just spoke with my lender last week and they said that what you want to do is look at your credit report yourself and you want to make certain changes that you know need to be made, because if the lender pulls it, and this is what they told me, if the lender pulls it and then you make those changes, they consider that sort of like manipulating. And I didn't even know that, Angel. So you want to pull your credit report and we could talk through your credit report. You know, I charge a small fee for that, but we could talk through your credit report and talk about what it is that you need to do. What you also need to know that is a myth. Your real estate agent does not see your credit report unless you show it to them. So a lot of people are like, oh no, I don't want to work with my friend so and so because they gonna know what my credit score is and what's on my credit, and they gonna know that I owe back taxes to my baby mama. No, we don't know all that. We only, you send it to the mortgage lender, they stay in their lane and we stay in our lane. All the mortgage lender tells us is what you're qualified for. In some instances, they may tell us the score because then that helps us to, you know, sort of have a conversation with you moving forward, but we don't know all the details of your credit report. So if you want to talk through it, I will be more than happy to talk through it with you. So it behooves you to pull your own credit score, pull your own credit report.
I'm so glad you said that, Teray, because we talked about this. We talked a little bit about this on the podcast as well, especially how you have friends and family members who don't want to, they may not want to like come to you for real estate. They may not want to come to me like for help with their business credit or personal credit, because they're like, oh, they're going to know all my business. Like people always walk away from their friends or family member who have a skill set because they're like, oh, they're going to be all up in my business.
Yep.
And if you're a professional, you can't share that information with other people. But your real estate agent should not be knowing that information. It's your loan officer. But then again, your loan officer should be sharing that information, what's on your credit report, with with your agent or with anyone else.
No.
So people should really stop having all these like different assumptions and being cautious of like who they work with. Or you'll find so many people, they'll just go and work with a random person they don't know only because they're like, well, this person is going to know I filed for bankruptcy or they did X, Y, Z.
And I'm so happy you said that, because that random person doesn't always have your back the same way your cousin, your friend, your neighbor would.
Right.
They won't be advocating for you the same way. Like as a realtor, we're able to submit letters on your behalf, right? And we can submit a letter to the agent that could go in with your contract. And you know, what better person to submit on your behalf or to advocate for you? And so if you trust them and respect their business, you know, I would say, you know, support the business, but also knowing like if you're a business owner, you're supporting another business owner, right? Let me say this one last thing before we wrap up. I wish we had spent more time on this. If you are a business owner, you have to pay taxes. In order to qualify for a home, you have to start to pay taxes. They're looking at your last 2-year tax statements. And if you show all write-offs and no profit, you're not going to get qualified for anything. And yes, I said anything. You're not going to get qualified for a car. You're not going to get qualified for a house because you're showing that you didn't make any money. I'm using T's for everything. You didn't make any.
You have to emphasize, because Teray, this can be a whole nother episode. We have to talk about this.
Let's have this. This is a whole nother episode.
This is the bonus.
I'm going to tell you very quickly, then we're going to have this as another conversation. If you are a business owner and you want to buy a house, you have to start paying taxes. You have to start saving taxes and paying taxes. You have to show that you made some money and that you paid taxes on that. That's what they're qualifying you for. If you only show that you made $25,000 and you're trying to buy $125,000 house, it's not going to happen. If you only show that you made $25,000 and you're trying to buy a $25,000 car, it's not going to happen. So as a business owner, you have to start paying. And even if you're like, okay, if you're getting cash payments, you got to have, even if you can take the taxes and you can get on a payment plan later, right, for the taxes. At least you showed that you made the money. So then get on a payment plan for the taxes. If it's $25,000 worth of taxes on $100,000 that you made, $25,000, you can pay that during the course of the year. You cut back on some other things, you sacrifice, but you paid the taxes so that you can show that you brought in $75,000. And last but not least, girl, we got to have this conversation. Everybody's mad about the fact that the billionaires are getting away with paying itty bitty bitty taxes. Let me tell you why. Because their wages are so small. They're only showing a small amount in wages, but they're actually paying themselves through dividends. So they're paying themselves on a quarterly basis through dividends and other types of, girl, literally, I took notes on that the other day, and my accountant had already told me that. But you want to pay yourself dividends, and you want to pay, you want to have assets that you can borrow from. So if you're borrowing from your assets, you're taxed at a lower tax bracket than when you're borrowing, say, from your, you're taxed at a lower tax bracket than when you're paid with wages. Wages are taxed higher. So for everybody who has a regular job, you're going to pay more taxes. It's just the way the system is. We as business owners have to learn how to use the system. And we as business owners have to learn that pay yourself a small wage, but then pay yourself in dividends each quarter, and talk to your tax attorney or tax accountant about how you can manipulate the system, not even manipulate it, how you can take advantage of the system that's already set up for you to succeed, and stop complaining about the people who are using a system legally. They're using it legally, and you can too.
Terre, we'll have to come back with like a 30-minute, 1 hour bonus on business finances, because when there's so many people who want to get out of their tax liability. People don't want to pay taxes. They want to pull a Trump. I'm going to say they want to pull a Trump. So they want to file all these deductions, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to pay taxes. I'm going to file XYZ. They're trying to file everything. And I'm like, if you file everything, your business has a loss. You don't qualify for anything, boo. Like, you're taking yourself out the box. So that's a good conversation to have, especially from my side, from the business credit side, from people that I work with who want to obtain business capital. I'm like, you think you can walk into this bank and ask them for money, capital for your business, but you're showing a constant loss every single year? Getting a business credit card is easy. Of course, you don't show any tax returns. But when you're really trying to build and scale your business, you got to take some responsibility. You have to really start to pay your taxes. And so that's a good conversation that we can have. Maybe I'll have to have you back next week to chat about that with me. And maybe we can pull on an accountant out here as well.
I have someone.
Man,
yes,
that's a good conversation.
Let's have it. Because let me tell you, your folks, as we're ending this conversation, I didn't do it all right. I didn't get it right. I didn't come from a family that taught me about finances or investing or any of that. Angel just so happened to study this. She studies this. She knows this. And so she practiced what she studied. I had to learn this along the way, and I learned this the hard way. And I'm still learning, and I'm still growing, and I'm still fixing credit. So let me be the first to say that my stuff is not perfect. My stuff is not even nowhere near what I know it can be and where it's going to be. But as I learn these things, it would be a disservice, and it would be, I would be failing my audience and my clients if I didn't teach and talk about what I have learned the hard way, learned through trial and error. It would be, it wouldn't be fair. And so I want everybody to come up, and I want people to realize, like, this is not a scary thing, that you can do this even with the income that you currently have. you can, and even for you high earners, you're not leveraging your money. You're not leveraging your credit. Girl, let's talk about this next week. You ain't leveraging your credit. You got credit cards and credit limits that you're not leveraging. You're not leveraging your good credit score. You're not leveraging the equity in your house. You're not leveraging anything. You're just sitting on good credit in a house with all this equity, money in the bank, and you ain't doing nothing with it. And when you retire, you're going to retire on what, less than 50% of what you earned when you were working?
We
And then
have to talk about that. So we're gonna come back with a whole
okay,
show on finances, investing, specifically business finances, because oh gosh.
girl,
Sorry, we're gonna come back. We're gonna have to come back.
next
But
week. I can't wait.
yeah,
Same time,
so everyone that's
same place.
next Saturday, sure, we can do this. So,
Same time, same
everyone in the
place.
group, if you're in the Facebook group is M Suite Milestones, Motivation, and Money. Of course, if you're watching from the Facebook page, Angel Speaks, join the Facebook group. We'll go live again next weekend. Put some invites out there. We'll also be live on YouTube. Share the broadcast with your friends, family, invite people in. If you're watching after, leave some comments. Again, follow Terre online. You can follow her online at Terre Holmes. And we will have all of her information there in the description of the broadcast so you can reach out to her. Follow me online at Miss RMBA, MISSRMBA.com. You can also book me to speak there as well. Find out more on my website. And if you have an idea for the podcast, you can pitch your podcast idea via email. So you can send that via email to info@missrmba.com. And we've been on here for an hour and
I
15
know,
minutes.
and I love to talk. And so, if you guys want to invite me onto your podcast or invite me to speak to your church group, speak to your sorority group, your fraternity group, speak to, I love speaking as well and educating. I come from a background of education. I used to be an educator, if you can't tell. I love educating people. So, if you're looking for a speaker as well to talk about business and finances and really, starting all over, right? And all that good stuff. So starting all over, leveraging what you have, acquiring real estate. I love to talk about those subject matters. So thank you, Angel.
Thanks, Terre, so much for your insight, all the nuggets. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.